What is up, my little Deinos? Vepsis here, your coach of the Helsinki Hydreigons, and we are finally back from a little summer break for a Champions of Galar tournament Season 2, and we are invited back, and hopefully this time around we can have a deeper run than Season 1 in itself. We had a good regular season. Player-wise, round 1 exit wasn't something I was really happy with, so this season I will hopefully have a lot longer run for myself, and that's gonna be the goal for the season and close out the Generation 8 Wi-Fi scene as a whole before the Generation 9 is around the corner. How the drafting works you're gonna be seeing right about now on your screen, a little bit like general idea how the drafting works, and my position going to this draft was the 6th pick overall out of the 16 coaches. Make sure to also check out those 16 coaches down below in the description so you can be following the league a lot more closely, and there should be also a link to the Discord server to be able to follow there as easily as well for this league in itself. Make sure to do that. This season is going to be a lot of fun for you as a viewer to enjoy the Generation 8 Wi-Fi scene as a draft league format for the very last time and at the highest competition that it has to offer. But now, let's go and see what I was able to pick in round 1. And as my round 1 selection, I decided to go after Hydreigons from the 17-point category, which is the second highest tier for mons to be priced. There was Mute that was also available at the highest price, but I opted against it. And Hydreigons was always in my mind to be picking first, assuming the draft was going as I was kind of predicting to, coming into my picking at 16th or 6th overall. Thankfully not 16th overall. I wonder who got that pick. I would feel really bad for them. But regardless, going to Hydreigons is that I basically just wanted this mon because I think that this mon just has literally no bad matchups going forwards. Like, there's always gonna be something that Hydreigons can provide for you. Whether it's gonna be defensive sets, offensive sets like Choice Scarf, Choice Bandit, Choice Specs, a special set, a setup set with Sword Dance and Rock Polish, so both included. Like, there's literally nothing that Hydreigons cannot do, and it couldn't do it well. And it's been like showcasing, like just using a Smoke Gun as an example, even though we are talking about Draft League here. In Smoke Gun, in Generation 8 Galar decks that we are playing, for example, this mon's usage on the ladder is almost like 50% usage on the high ladder, which is crazy. Still thinking about Hydreigons still is used, and it's that prevalent of a mon. And I do think that can be used a little bit of like a example to think about in draft league scene as well, because it's gonna be facing those same mons on the ladder. Granted, obviously in draft league format they know it's gonna be coming, but regardless, it can do so many things well, and I'm really looking forward to have it this time around. And last time I think I had it was in the UBL Season 6, which I couldn't be able to finish, but I know that team did end up going and win the title in itself after I wasn't able to finish the season. So whatever draft I did with Landers there last time, it did pretty well with it, and I'm hoping that will be the same here as well. And just icing on a cake, rounding out my first selection was that Ogalbina was actually picking right after me, and I sniped him from Landers there. And so Ogalbina, he can just suck it. Alright, and now that getting that joke away about sniping Ogalbina with our round 1 pick, we are going after now looking at my round 2 pick selection, which was Necrozma. Now, this was kind of like a spontaneous pick at the time, because there were a lot of other options that I was kind of hoping that would fall for me, but all of those were basically gotten taken, which was kind of, I guess, expected, and knowing that there are 16 people picking in this, and there's only so many high tier mons that people can be taking, and everybody knows what they're doing with their draft. So I have to just wait and see what was the best mon available to me and see that if it's a fit for my team or not. And spontaneously enough, Necrozma has been a mon that I wanted to always try, but it's never been like a fit whenever the opportunity came to potentially pick it. And if there was any thought of picking it afterwards, it already got taken by somebody else at the time. So now it was a right time, at least to me, to feel like to take opportunity, use this thing. And similar to Hydreigons, Necrozma to me is one of those mons that you can qualify that it can do literally everything, and it can do well. And it can be one of those mons that it can be always a winning condition that opponent will having a headache to prepare for. And this is similar mon to Hydreigons as well that I hate facing myself, so I'm very happy that I have it for myself this season, and so that I don't have to prepare against it, and instead I give myself opportunity to use it myself at the first time. And Basically, what I would have to now worry about with the rest of the draft is allow these two Pokemon to be as flexible as possible in the matchup, so they will not be pigeonholed into defensive roles too often or not, even though their defensive sets can be also good. But ideally, I'll let them to be flexible. So that's something looking at towards for my following picks. But Necrozma itself, very happy I get to use it, and I have no idea if it's gonna be around Generation 9 or not. So I'm gonna take my shot and using it now while I can. And as the round 3 selection, I went to pick myself my bulky water type and also covering a fairy type because I did not want to worry about that rest of the draft as well. So I took Primarina, which was also part of our team in the UPPA Season 4, which we just got to win as well before the summer break. And it did very well for me there. I was very happy how I was able to utilize it. And I feel like it can be a good fit because it covers my first 2 picks' weaknesses for the most part perfectly. Except for Ghost weakness in Necrozma, because Necrozma is weak to Bug and Dark besides Ghost. Primarina resists those. Landorstarian, as we know, is weak to Ice and Water. By being a Water type, Primarina can resist those as well for it. So I was very happy with the synergy typing wise that it gave for me. And it gave me a lot of flexibility for the rest of the draft. Not try to find a water type later on, which I would be less satisfied with, or fairy type for example. And he gave me a nice special wall breaker or a bulky pivot as well that I noticed that Primarina can do pretty well in my UPPA Season 4 run. So very happy with it, not too much I need to explain there, just I felt like it was a good fit at the time to take at round 3. And as my round 4 selection, I decided to go after a strong electric type and providing me some speed, and that is going to be Raikou for us. Raikou I just wanted to have because, again, I needed some speed on the team, securing that early on so I won't be struggling with that later on in the draft, knowing that how many people already were picking some of the faster mons that I would have liked to have myself. He gave me the electric typing to beat bulky waters ideally for my Landorstarian and Primarina. And it's a mon that I think in Galadex now that it's been gotten access to Scald as we know, has become one of those very pesky, annoying electric types that people don't give it too much credit for until they have to face it themselves, and then they're gonna be like, oh, Raikou is actually a problem now that it has that Scald hub. Like, that's what at least my first impressions of it whenever I had to go up against it, that I'm like, yeah, it actually made a big difference, like holy shit, it can be annoying. So I'm hoping that would be the case for me, that I can utilize it that way versus my opponents. And it's a very versatile mod that it can be just all-out attacker, you can be sub-toxic, protect like a Starbreaker set, you can be a Calm Mindset with its coverage. And again, the speed here is very nice to have at 115. So very happy with the Raikou. Wasn't the first electric type that I thought I would be picking going to a draft blankly, but at the time it just felt like a right pick for me to do. And with the round 5 selection, I decided to go after a very important type that I wanted to ensure that I will be happy what I have, considering how many of them were already taken, and that was a Steel type. And the Steel type that was the best one available in my opinion at the time was Metagross. The only other Steel type that I was considering which would have brought less weaknesses to the team, but what would have been a lot less passive and one-dimensional, would have been Resisteel, which has done well for me. Like obviously Lin has, the Resisteel has done a good work for me, but I wanted to use Metagross again. This mon actually is a Steel type that I find a lot of success with. Even in Yu-Gi-Oh when I used it, even though I didn't get too many kills when I used it this past season, I was still very happy, and I noticed how often I brought this mon. And I found it very reliable that way. And I love the flexibility that it has, that it can go defense, it can go offensive setup, and it has just a very strong attack stat as well that can be utilized as well with its priority bullet punch. And while I do have to worry about the Ghost and Dark weakness later on, as long as I get at least a very solid and sturdy Dark type to this team, I think I can make it work. And the upside with my first 5 picks, how flexible they can be, was something that I was really excited about to build with. So that's why I opted to go with the Metagross, bite the bullet with adding another Psychic typing to the table, and already having idea what Dark type I would wanting to be taking next. So let's go and see what that Dark type will be, covering my Ghost and Dark weakness. So with the round 6 selection, I did need to make sure that I get a dark type that is sturdy enough to take on ghost and dark types if needed to for my team. So Primarina, for example, will not be the only good dark resistant. That is going to be Scrafty, a mod that I've used a lot in this generation. You have seen me using it in AP Academy early on this generation, and also in the UBL, the most recent finals that I won, I believe, was Season 5. It also was able to be there and giving the final kill to secure us that title. So we have good memories of Scrafty in this channel, and it's just a solid mod that can do quite a few things. Defensive, well, you can make it physical defensive, special defensive, you can make it bulk up with Train Punch, you can Dragon Dance with it and sweep with that. It has 3 great abilities. Like, there's a lot of good things about Scrafty. The only downside is that it may not be the strongest right from the get-go, but just having stab knockoff and all the coverage moves and things like Super Fang and phasing options and all that, I don't find it to be too passive to be utilized. So I'm very happy with Scrafty. It covers just what I needed for this team as a dark type, and I don't think there was really a better choice at the time for me to take as a dark type in itself going forward. So very happy that it was there, maybe early as around 6, but I had to secure it for myself going forwards. And next up, we were picking up ourselves up a Serena, which provides us a crash type that can resist ground force very well, and it can also be very good remover for the team besides Landorus, and just be very flexible, either being defensive or offensive sets, and providing ourselves another way to beat bulky water types that I still felt like I needed to have another way of dealing with those. So Serena at the time felt like the just best option that I could have had, and it did not really ruin my budget too much, because at this point I have to think about my own budget, how I can afford still the things that I need to have, and Serena fulfilled a few needs that I still wanted to cover in one Pokemon in itself. And I've used it this very briefly in a speed tour, but not more than that ever in my draft league career. But with that small sample size, I was actually very happy how it was able to do for me in that small speed tour that I did during a summer break. So hopefully it's gonna be able to do well for us. I do like it how it fits on the team on paper, and hopefully it works as well in practice. And as my round 8 pick, I decided to go after Weezing as my poison type, providing me just a very sturdy and defensive poison type to deal with fighting types, to free up that from being a thing for Necrozma or Landorus or Primarina having to deal with, to be pigeonholed into that role. And it gives me a mod that can be either utilized as a crown immunity with Levitate, which is nice to have an extra crown immunity on the team, or it can also be a grounded poison type with neutralizing gas, which I think, at least for me, is important to have in my own drafts in itself. Not everybody would agree that it's mandatory, but for me, I find most comfortable just having one in my roster that I think is strong enough as a mod in itself to be brought into games as well. So that's basically Weezing. Not too much to explain there, we all know what it does, but I think it has a good purpose on the team, allowing my other mons to be more flexible themselves. And as my next pick, I decided to go after a Talonflame, which gave me that much needed speed, elite speed here to utilize besides my choice Scarfers as a form of speed control. It gives me a niche priority option with Gale Wings as well, so I'd have something else besides Metacross as a priority option on my team. It also gives me a mod that can utilize well U-turn and lure in certain things like bulky electric types, bulky water types, or a bulky electric types that my other mods can take very well advantage of. And I like Talonflame matches on it, potential weeks which I might run into that I prefer Talonflame for something else. And it's nice to have a flying type that isn't necessarily weak to ice, since I already had Landorus there and times 4 weak to ice. So I'm not passing too much ice weakness on my team already that it had going on by picking a flying type. So I felt at the time that Talonflame would be a nice fit. It has its flaws, as we know, being a little too weak at the time, but as long as you can deal with its counters with your rest of the draft, I believe it can do its job just fine. And that's what I'm going to be believing going forwards as well with it. And as my round 10 selection, I decided to go after a mod that I felt like was somewhat necessary going to the future matchups, but what kind of resistance it provides me. And most importantly, the one that I was looking at that I wanted to have is adding another good fire resist on the team, because the only ones thus far were like Talonflame and Primarina, So I wanted to ensure that I have another good way of resisting fire, and Kudra provided that for me. But it also becomes a very nice and natural special wall, so my other things may not be forced into that role. It gives me a little bit more flexibility to utilize other mods in a different laws, like Scrafty, for example, now can be physically defensive more often than not than having to be specially defensive wall if needed to, so Kudra can do that just fine as well. So it just gave me a little bit more freedom and a breathing room in team building wise. And Kudra, the brief example that I got to use in the UBL season, again with Landersterian and Talonflame, funny enough, was actually a pretty good example. It did get to do a decent amount of work, and I do like its matchups going forward versus some of the rest of the traps that I was seeing forming up, and I do think it's gonna be a useful asset for me to have going forwards. And now we only have 2 picks to go actually, and there's gonna be some of the most niche picks that you've probably ever seen me picking in a draft in itself, but they were very matchup dependent, and we'll see how long they last in a roster. But this is basically the big 10 mons for my draft that I'm very happy with, and the last 2, we'll see how they're gonna be able to do, or how long they last actually in my roster in itself. So the first of the last 2 Pokemon that I was able to still pick with my remaining 5 points that I had left for a very niche situations if I happen to play certain teams, and for me one of those was Basculin, because I wanted to have a good strong priority option with Aqua Jet adaptability alongside it, and therefore it gave me option to revenge kill certain things that I would have probably had a little bit tougher time otherwise to be able to have, since my priority options aren't as strong as you maybe wanted to have normally in your draft in itself. So I opted to go with Basculin just purely for the priority for certain matches where the Aqua Jet would have come in handy, but without knowing at the time my schedule either, this was a mod that I knew that if those matchups do not show up for me in my regular season, there might be a decent chance I drop it. So we have to wait and see how long this little guy will last on our team, but I did have an actual purpose to draft Basculin. I normally do not make these kind of picks, and I usually don't pick a mon in general if I don't believe that it has a certain niche that it can provide, and that's basically it for the Basculin itself. And let's go see what the last one is gonna be. And as my last pick of the draft will be Togedemaru, which is a little bit cutting off on my face cam, but you can see them pretty decently there smiling in the back. And Togedemaru is basically a very much a niche pick in a way that it's a very specific matchups that I was looking at where it can come in handy, even though I already had its typings on my team being the Metagross and Raikou, as you can clearly tell. So it wasn't really necessary there as adding a new typing on the team, but just a very niche matchup depending mon, which we have to wait and see if those are occurring. And the last 2 mons basically being Basculin and Togedemaru, those are the ones that I can definitely admit that they are a little bit up in the air what I will do with them once I know my schedule and I get a better grasp of what I really need going forwards in this regular season. But outside of those last 2 picks, I'm pretty happy with my top 10 mons what I have, and the last 2 mons we'll just have to see how wait a little bit on those 2, that what kind of value they're gonna be providing to them, or do I flip them for something else later on this season, sooner than later, potentially as well. But that's pretty much the draft as you can see as a whole. Let me know in the comment section below how you like this draft in itself. What are you looking forward in this season for me to use? And make sure, obviously, as I said earlier on the video, check out all the 16 coaches down below in the description. Their draft analysis should be going up at the same time as mine as you're seeing this, so if you go and check out somebody else's channel, their draft analysis should be there waiting for you to see. So make sure to do that. Stay tuned for this season. Join the Discord channel if you haven't yet, so you can follow the league the most easiest way to possible from there, because you're gonna have the opportunity to vote every single week who you think is gonna be winning. You're gonna get tagged for your favorite coaches whenever their video goes up, and you get to interact with the other people, including myself as well as a coach. You get to interact with us in the Discord server. So make sure to do that if you're interested in that, and make sure to tune in and subscribe to this channel, because week 1 will be right after this. In 1 week of from now, I'm gonna be playing Bruno 7 for my week 1 battle, somebody I never got to play before, and I'm very excited to go and face him there for that game in itself. So stay tuned for that, subscribe if you're new, and thank you for watching, and I'm gonna be seeing you guys later.